or but only if you feel just, and if not, it's better that you marry only one. Okay. Right now, I'm just guessing it, is your question why can men marry four and a woman can't?
Yeah.
Right, fair enough. So I think initially one of the answers to that question was this, that is being able to trace the children to the father. Now, I think a kind of argument to that is DNA.
Okay.
I presume.
Okay. Okay.
Unfortunately, most people don't have mobile phones, let alone DNA.
Yeah.
That may change. What do you see being wrong with it?
I mean, I guess it just seems unequal. It seems unequal. It seems, and when you're talking about tracing it back to the father, what about tracing it back to the mother? I guess it's that, again, what we were discussing before about choice of, I don't want to be told I can't go to the front lines of war, but if I wanted to, you know, and is that in the Quran? Is that?
Yes. So it's in the Quran. Yeah. It's in the Quran.
Are there people that, I guess, so you know, within, say, Christianity, for instance, how it's a whole thing of, you know, I think it's in the Bible, I think this is correct, something about how you can't wear an item of clothing with multiple fabrics or something like that. Like some of these kind of things that are in the Bible that people don't abide by, don't kind of go with. Within the Quran, are there things that people have, you know, do separately to the Quran that would still be accepted? Are there things that people don't abide by in the Quran and it would still be accepted in the religion? How does that
That's work? A great point. So the thing is this: us as humans, we believe we're not perfect. We're always prone to follow our whims and desires and to make mistakes, to do what's been deemed as bad, okay, from regardless of whatever moral standpoint you're coming from. Yeah. I think what's important in Islam is if a Muslim does something which goes against the commandment of God, if they say what I've done is wrong, then they turn to God and seek forgiveness, but they may continue doing it.
Sure.
What is the biggest problem is if you say, so there's a clear edict in the Quran, you do it, and then you say, well, that thing in the Quran's commanding me not to do it, is wrong.
Yes.
That's when that takes you out of the fold of Islam. Okay, because what you're doing is you're going against the commandment of God. Now you could say, look, I've fallen, I've lapsed, whatnot, fair enough. But then if you say God was wrong in saying this, then that takes you out of Islam.
Being gay.
So being gay is forbidden in Islam. Now, can you be Muslim and gay? Yes, but it's a caveat. It's a caveat. Just like as I've explained, you could say, right, I'm Muslim, I have gay tendencies, I'm attracted to men. That is not a sin. What the sin is actually having sexual intercourse.
So
the act itself. Now that's like a big sin in Islam. Okay. Now what you would do as a Muslim, you would sincerely repent to God, say, God forgive me, with the intention of not to do that act again. Okay. You're still a Muslim. What takes you out of Islam is to say, I'm homosexual, I've got these tendencies, inclinations towards homosexuality, to commit the act, and then to say that commandment forbidding me from the act is wrong. So what you're doing is you're trying to negate God's law in relation to your feelings and what you feel is best. That in turn takes you out of Islam. So there's a fine balance of being gay and Muslim.
Interesting. So would you associate yourself with a man or a woman that is gay or lesbian or whatever if they did not act on it? And if they did act on it, would you still befriend them? Would you still be around them? Or is that something you would separate yourself?
No, no. Personally, I wouldn't separate myself from them, no, because fundamentally they're still Muslim. Now, if someone, or Muslim, sorry, committed the act itself of homosexuality, and then in turn said, well, you know, I still class myself as Muslim, but this particular aspect of the law, I say God was wrong in that,
Yes.
then by default, they're not Muslim anymore. Now, would I disengage from that person? Not necessarily, no. I would advise them.
Yes.
I would tell them to look at changing their ways and their understanding. Would I, in the workplace, work with someone as a work colleague who is gay? Yes, I would. Because if not, I would be a hermit living in a cave.
Yeah, to be fair. To be fair, makes sense. And what about your children? If they had gay inclinations and they did act?
I would advise them not to. If they turned around and said again, hey pups, I'm gay and I'm proud, God was incorrect in this instance of saying that it was a wrong act,
Yes.
then personally, I would stick by them to advise them. Because if I sever the ties of kinship in relation to that, then I'll give you an example. So it talks in the Quran about a Muslim having a parent or parents who are non-Muslim.
Yes. Yes.
So the Muslim accepted Islam, wasn't originally initially Muslim, accepted Islam,
Yes.
and their parents are non-believers in that sense. Now it talks about if the parents hark on their child constantly, stop being Muslim, it's not the right choice, I'm against it, even talking bad of God or the Quran or the Prophet, blah blah blah. The Quran, Allah in the Quran says anything that invite you to in relation to what is contrary to Islam, don't accept that from them. So let's be at the dinner table,
Yes.
and let's have a glass of wine, and we insist on you drinking a glass of wine, which is forbidden. Reject the glass of wine. But then it continues to say, still be dutiful to your parents,
Okay.
give them the rights that they deserve as parents, and speak a kind word to them.
It's acceptance.
Don't cut the ties of kinship.
Okay.
So even though they're telling you you're wrong to be Muslim,
Yeah.
they can throw things in your face to try and take you out of Islam or
Yes.
to be sinful or whatever. Be kind in your rejection of those invitations,
Yes.
but also be kind to them and give them their rights as parents, and don't cut the ties of kinship.
So what about if they declined advisory? If you went to someone and you were advising them and they were like, I don't need to know. Thank you. I'm happy with the way I am. What would follow that? That would be an acceptance. Would it still be? I still want to try and like help you from my point of view with my religion.
Is this a family member or non-family member or just a work? I mean, is there any
Um,
existing relationship or just in general?
Let's say a close friend.
So it said in the Quran, "La ikraha fi din." There is no compulsion in religion. And there's a particular chapter. Which chapter is it? Deenukum wa ana deen. Can't remember. La, I'm sure.
No, you're talking about.
You have your religion, I have mine. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not a conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a chapter in the Quran where number one, there's no compulsion in religion. And number two, there's a chapter in the Quran, I'm paraphrasing, where it says, you have your religion, deen. Like I said, deen is a way of life,
Yes,
regardless.
yes.
You have your way of life as a non-Muslim. I have my way of life. And to you, yours, and to mine, mine. So you grab your road and I grab mine. Now, does that mean that we cannot be work colleagues? Does that not mean we cannot go into literally business partnership? Does that not mean we can be neighbors?
Absolutely.
So there's a hadith where the Prophet, peace upon him, said, you are not amongst us. It's not excommunication, but it's just to show the severity of the situation. You are not amongst us, the Muslims, if you eat to your belly's full and your neighbor has not ate to their belly's full. In Islamic law, it said that if me as a Muslim, I'm a Muslim, you're not a Muslim, I have an element of wealth where I'm comfortable, and the other person's not. Knowingly, if I buy my child the latest BMX bike,
Yes.
and they're outside on their BMX bike, and I know the other neighbour hasn't got the
Yes.
funds,
Yes.
and I know that consequently that child is going to go to their parent and say, Mum, can I have one? You
Yes,
know, they
of
always put the
course, of
sweets
course.
by the kiosk when you pay, so the kids jump up and down.
Yeah.
I shouldn't do that. I should only allow my child to ride their bike in the backyard, not in the front yard, which will then put pressure on the parent who doesn't have to have that burden put upon them.
Wow.
So there's an element of respect and taking into consideration the other's situation and beliefs.
Yes. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
My last question,
Of
the
course.
one I do not know, is about abortion, and in terms
Yes.
of what that means in your religion.
Great question. So generally speaking, abortion is forbidden, but there are caveats. One of the caveats are this: if there's going to be harm to the mother,
See,
So if the
she
do-
is danger of life.
yes,
I see.
yes, then we have to preserve the existing long-term life of the mother over the child. And I believe it's the decision of the mother on this. It's not forced upon her. It's on her. It's her decision. But to say I've fallen pregnant, even if it's out of wedlock,
Yes.
to abort is not allowed. It's a sin.
Sin. Okay.
Because for us, it's the preservation of life which is incumbent.
And why is,
When you find out the kid's gonna have in pain and misery the rest of his life, can we have a choice?
No, it's the preservation of life over the mother.
So there's nothing.
Right. So what we have is what's called Beit al-Mal, the house, the treasury. It should be upon the government and society to provide the funds to allow that child who's going to have disabilities
see.
for caring, for medication, like an NHS,
Sure.
to care for that and to support the mother
Okay.
in that endeavour.
And what about a child that is simply unwanted? A child, say, that will go into the adoption or in danger of possible abuse, emotionally or physically. Even then, abortion is not.
So that's like a
That would still be a sin.
two-stage question.
Yes.
So in relation to adoption, if there's got to be a serious issue
Yeah.
with the parent or parents.
Yeah.
Now, if they are known to abuse the child, physical, mental, whatnot, then yes, of course, the state has to step in for that. And not only that, if that's the case, then the parent should be judged in relation to criminal law. And then it's adoption and caring for orphans is actually praised in the Quran in relation to this. So much so that if the parents were to pass away and that child inherits the wealth of the parent, then the guardian who looks after the child has to also not touch that wealth. Okay, and the name of the orphan, in terms of the family name, should be preserved because lineage has to be preserved. The person has to know where they come from,
Right.
the family name,
Right.
you know, their ancestry.
Yes.
It shouldn't be cut off and lost, because if that is, you know, then in somewhat the person's lost in that sense. Because there was 2 points to your question. So one was abuse.
Abuse, and
was the other
also in
one?
terms of just being unwanted, I think was the other one.
In what sense?
Just in terms of if you get pregnant and you know,
just
say
don't want the
You
child.
just don't want the child. You're just not ready. You're not at an age, even if you. I mean, you can be 14, 17, whatever. Or if you're 30, you just are not ready. Even then, it is a sin.
Is it not wanting the child so you can go and watch the football and go to the club?
But even
And
then, even in
what
terms of-
what is behind it?
I mean, it could be.
I mean, is there an element of selfishness from the mother or the father?
I think it is. obviously abortion, I think, is a thing that is done. It's not a choice that you
talking
want to
about
make.
adoption, not abortion.
Oh,
The question was about
see.
abortion, adoption.
See.
Because your question was about adoption.
Yes.
So if a mother was to have a child and then decide
To go to adopt, like.
I want to adopt,
Yes.
then that's why there's what we believe the family unit of marriage. So you've committed
Yes.
with marriage,
Yes.
and prior to marriage, you've discussed whether you want children or not.
Yes.
Then as a consequence, if you don't, then let the father deal with it. If you don't want to deal with it,
Yeah. Makes sense.
let the father deal with it.
I get that.
And then also family members can step in.
Yeah, that also makes sense.
I mean, there's cases, unfortunately, that the aunt or the grandparents or whatever have stepped in.
Yeah.
So if you could preserve that
course.
family unity, then it's best.
Yeah.
Then it's
Makes
best.
sense. Makes sense.
What are your thoughts?
On abortion in general and everything?
Yeah.
I am someone, I believe it is the choice. I believe, obviously, it's not a choice that anybody wants to make. It's not easy. I don't think it's something to go, oh yeah, I'll do this. I think it's, of course, I understand the selfishness of making that decision, but I believe in choice. I believe in, you have to largely know whether, if you're not ready, putting a kid into the adoption process, is that the right decision necessarily? No one knows. But I think if you do make that decision, I will always stand by. I don't think so.
It's a cliche counter argument. What about the choice of the child?
The child doesn't have a choice. The child is
Isn't that
is
contradiction?
not there.
Well, if the child's living
Mm.
and us as adults in society,
Mm.
we are guardians over the children and make choices on their behalf because they're
Yes.
incapable of making those choices. And if it's deemed that our choices are detrimental to the child,
Yes.
then the adult, by default, them being an adult, they're held accountable
Yes.
for making wrong choices on behalf of the child. So by saying the argument is choice, but by then saying then you're not getting the choice of the child, is that not contradictory?
I just think it's a case of there is no way to know what that, and in my mind, it wouldn't be a child yet until it's born. That obviously is, details.
So is there then a limit on when the fetus could be aborted?
I mean, I think it's, the laws that were said recently about in terms of like 6 weeks.
Okay.
I think that's absurd because most of the time you don't know you're pregnant until 10 weeks or
Right.
12 weeks. I mean, because you don't know if you've missed your period, and realistically with those kind of things, like sometimes you can miss it for a month, not think about it 2
Yeah.
months. Oh, maybe it's because I'm not eating well enough, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that limitation needs to be discussed much, much more with women because we know that, 6 weeks, you're never going to know. By that time, it's very, very unlikely that you'll know. I just think, you can't hear the thoughts of the child in your eyes, a child. It's a decision that has to be made by a woman, wholeheartedly. I truly, truly believe that.
So it's okay to abort because the child is not capable of voicing their opinion.
I mean, circumstances. It's all about if you got pregnant and you don't have the money or you don't have, you're 16.
Sorry, what's your name?
Amy Beth.
Amy Beth. My name's Idris. You're gonna shake my hand?
I know. I was like, no, it's
No, it's all right, Amy Beth.
Sorry, that's my bad.
Do you remember when I said that if there's something, it was actually about shaking hands. If there's something forbidden, we're not even meant to go close to it. There's that barrier. So if there's the opportunity of you possibly aborting because you don't have the funds or whatnot, should you not even be having sexual intercourse in the first instance? Because the possibilities you could then, abort a life.
But I think there's also taking into consideration that you can put, you can wear a condom, you can get on the pill, do these things, but that doesn't mean that that's 100% going to work. Of choice. But then instances of rape, instances of sexual assault and things not by your choice and then getting pregnant. That's also another thing to take into consideration in terms of.
So with rape, I mean, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So the woman falls pregnant out of no choice,
Yes.
which is a bad thing.
Yes.
But then you can abort a fetus and also not give them the choice, which is a bad thing, because choice has been taken away. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I disagree with you
Yes.
just in terms of, you know, a woman is going through that emotional heartache and the pain and the physical and emotional pain of what she's experienced.
Yeah.
What is in her stomach is not. It doesn't know what is going on. I believe I'm spiritual to an extent. I believe in souls. I believe
you
in
do, okay.
energy at least.
Yeah.
Like transferring and whatever.
Yeah.
So I believe that is so much more forgiving in the eyes of God, in the eyes of humans, generally even, than having a woman not have the choice to abort. I think that's where I stand.
I appreciate that. I still don't think there's a level of consistency, because obviously
That is fair.
fair enough.
No, okay.
Obviously the child, I would presume, would experience the pain. From my understanding, understands, they're conscious.
See.
So the consciousness of the mother in relation to the fetus, at least from a particular moment in time onwards, they're a living being. And again, as the issue with the woman being raped and then becoming pregnant, falling pregnant, and obviously the choice was taken out of her hand. Again, with us aborting that fetus, we're doing the same. We're taking the choice away from the child,
I see what you're
because they're unable to, to choose it whether or not. Sorry, there's another point I was going to make, which completely lost. I've forgotten it. So you talked about rape. You talked about, for me, fundamentally also, it's about being responsible for your actions.
I see that.
So to say, condoms and other contraception and whatnot, it's like, beware, there are repercussions to your actions.
Of course.
So please take that into consideration, that if you are going to have sex, you may well fall pregnant,
Of course.
which will emanate in you terminating a life. Do you believe in the death penalty?
No.
Not at all.
And this is interesting. So I see what you're saying here. I guess the difference for me that is just, I don't think it makes things equal. I don't think it evens out. I don't think if you murder people you should get the death penalty. I think it's a better punishment to be imprisoned, for the rest of your life. And I understand the anger that comes from it if you're in the family.
Yeah.
I personally, I don't think I do.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because in Islam, if someone was murdered, initially it's on the family to choose whether to forgive, or if they're found guilty, for capital punishment to be given. But this is the question. This is very interesting for me.
Yeah.
The choice is given to the family, as the choice is given to the mother whether to abort or not. But the child doesn't have choice.
I understand what you're saying. I do. I guess our difference falls on technicality. I think our difference, actually, we're along the same lines here, but technicality is within you believing consciousness of that fetus.
Yeah.
Whereas I do not. That is where we're different.
So scientifically, there's a view.
Exactly.
Scientifically,
that's what's interesting.
So scientifically, I believe, from what I know, and I'm sure you'd agree. I can't recall exactly what it is, but scientifically, the fetus then becomes basically alive.
Exactly. That is where we're
Movement. So are you? And you talked about the 6-week term. Are you of the understanding that how long is a term? How long does it last? How many weeks does a term last? 20, it's in the 30s, isn't it? It's 9 months.
It's 9 months.
Let's talk
so,
months.
Yeah.
So if scientifically by 3 months
Yes.
or 3.5 months, the fetus is alive. It's
Yes.
moving. It's whatever.
Heartbeat.
Yeah, heartbeat.
Sure.
Thank you. From your understanding, could you still abort then or prior?
Yeah, I struggle with this one.
Yeah.
I think this is a choice I would give to the individual.
Mm.
I think, and it's tricky. It's very, very tricky. From my standpoint, I think obviously you also have to take into consideration the hormones. And when you do fall pregnant, the hormones kick in instantaneously and you have connection to whatever it is, abortion or not, you're going to feel the emotions and you're going to feel this connection to this child. And I think that's a choice that needs to be made by the person who is pregnant. Obviously, 6 months, that hits me a bit harder than 14 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
But again, I think there needs to be a barrier. I don't know where that will be. I certainly don't think it's 6 weeks. I think it should be 14. That's a technicality I need to think of like scientifically as well and research more to know what that means.
I'm going to ask you a very crude question.
Go.
What's the difference between aborting a fetus which is alive and heartbeat compared to aborting a toddler?
The difference is it being functioning in this society out of the womb and its own kind of sentient being now. Its own like it's experiencing the world, it's experiencing life and humans and it's aware and it's seeing everything.
Do you believe in euthanasia?
Yeah, I do.
As it could. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I had a child, God forbid, someone had a child who was severely disabled,
Yes.
wasn't able to contribute to society,
Yes.
didn't know you were actually its parent,
I'll contribute in what way?
interaction, like just almost mummified. Didn't know you were actually their parent.
Right.
Could you then dispose of that? Because what I'm saying is that the argument you gave for a toddler is they're their own sentient being, which obviously this disabled child is, but as far as they're concerned, they don't know if they've come or gone. They don't even know you're their parent.
Well, can they be cared for?
Could you, but I don't want the responsibility, and because what I'm trying to say is obviously the fetus is within the mother, so I believe your argument of choice for the mother is because she's playing a huge part in terms of it's within her. Obviously doesn't negate the fact that the fetus, with the heartbeat, is actually alive. It's a living being. And now, if someone was to give birth, and the mother was to give birth, and the child was its own being, it didn't interact. It wasn't able to be, solely independent for its needs.
Right.
Totally.
Right.
It had such a mental disability also that it didn't even know you were the mother.
Yeah.
Unable to interact, like a really unfortunate, severe disability, whereby literally every decision was incumbent upon the mother to make on its behalf. Could the mother then in turn decide to end its life? Because it's in such a mummified state.
It's like a comatose.
Akin to the state of the fetus in the mother's womb.
But I think at that point, no, because there are other options. Then it gets to the point of adoption or getting aid from the state or caregivers, especially. I think that is where it changes.
Could that not be done with the mother? Could the mother not give birth and then adopt?
But that is the 9 months of emotional.
Why? Why is it torment?
You feel as though, I guess you're being in a way forced to bring up, like, create this being within you, knowing that you cannot look after it, knowing that you have to go through and miss out on, you know, things that you may want to experience in your life or work, or, you know, you're throwing up every day and it's affecting you for 9 months. That's
Good point. So compared to bearing with it for 9 months to then preserve life, which could probably live up to 75 years and have kids and grandkids and the joys of life and the woes of life and all of that, is that a sacrifice worth having?
necessarily.
No?
Not necessarily.
What I think is that the and this is obviously theoretical, the mother is fighting against her own natural instincts
Yes. Yes.
to and that bond
It is.
through
It is.
9 months. She's
Absolutely.
fighting against her own natural instinct. So does that not show with her fighting against her natural instincts that's generally what she should do, should be striving for? Because if a homosexual has a homosexual tendencies,
Yes.
should they not go with their natural, which you perceive as their natural instinct, to fulfill the homosexual?
Those are two very different things.
But it's natural. Or should they be selfish and say, no, I want to carry on with my career. I want to negate the fact that I'm going to build this natural bond whereby I may feel worse or may decide to keep the child. So I'd rather cut it now.
The difference is that with homosexual tendencies, if you say, if you're gay, that is a pleasure. That is love. That is, you know, experience
And heartbreak.
and heartbreak. Everything in between. That is human nature to like experience that. If you are pregnant and you do not want to be, that is not pleasure. That is not. It's not natural if it doesn't feel like it is. I don't think it's of course, being pregnant and having children, yes, it's natural, like scientifically and humanly and whatever. If it doesn't feel natural to do that, if you are not ready, if you're not capable emotionally, physically, in any way, then they're two different things. And then I don't think you should have to do it.
So the homosexual act is because of pleasure and love. But then the person fell pregnant out of pleasure. So,
you don't want-
so the argument is, again, when you're doing something which is pleasurable, there are always consequences to it. So that's why we say, be mindful of your actions, because there are always repercussions.
Yeah.
And if you're going to do something, do it to the best of your abilities, that you're in a situation that safeguards you, first off, from it,
Yes.
or if you're going to delve into it, that it has an element of legitimacy and security,
Yes.
whereby if it happens, you're in a good place.
Yes, that's true. But also if it happens and mistakes are made, I also believe that there should be safeguarding for when shit hits the fan, when things go wrong, that you're protected to change your mind and to try and adapt.
That's fine. I mean, that's fine. I mean, that's if I put a tweet up, I could like take it back. It's only a tweet.
Exactly.
We're talking about life here.
Exactly.
It's having to backtrack, and I'm not trying to belittle what you just said in terms of
No, I
backtracking.
don't feel that. I don't feel that.
But you're too nice. You really are too
Like the
nice.
conversation.
But I
You're
appreciate it.
enjoyable.
But just for me, the severity of the backtracking and whatnot. Who are those flowers for?
Me?
Cool. Any other questions?
I don't
because I think we've gone full circle on
Yeah,
this one.
no, I agree with you. That's
For
like,
me,
I
choice for the mother,
wholeheartedly
of course,
enjoyed
but then when they're getting the choice of the child as well, and it's about if you're going to do something, bearing in mind the repercussions around it, and try and safeguard yourself, and be in a state whereby if the shit hits the fan, there are safeguards in place.
that.
Yeah.
Thank you for explaining. Thank you for your
Absolutely
time.
welcome.
Thanks for listening as well.
Absolutely welcome. Are you staying around? Or are you going?
I might head off because
Okay.
I'm bloody freezing.
Do come back, please.
I would love to. I'd love to. What's your name again?
Idris.
Idris. Good to meet you.
All the best.
You as